Welcome. Today we're looking at something quite concerning.
Mhm.
The idea that Germany might face a significantly higher risk of severe flooding in 2025.
Yeah, it seems like a convergence of factors. You've got climate change, infrastructure issues, and some policy delays all playing a part.
Exactly. And for listeners who want to get up to speed quickly but thoroughly, we're going to focus specifically on what the sources we have are indicating about this risk.
Right. So the aim is really to pull out the key information from these materials, yeah, to understand the current situation and, well, the potential challenges ahead.
Let's dive in then. What's the first major point that stands out from the sources?
Well, the big one, unsurprisingly, is the clear increase in extreme weather. The sources really hammer home that Germany's seen more frequent and intense floods over recent decades.
We're talking about events like 2002, 2013, and especially 2021, right? Those are huge.
Precisely. Those are pointed to as really stark warnings. And the link to climate change seems pretty direct, according to these materials.
How so? What are they highlighting?
It's mostly about changing rainfall patterns, more intense bursts of rain, and increased river discharge. That seems to be the main mechanism.
Okay.
And one study mentioned, actually projects, I think it was for Western Germany, a noticeable percentage increase in these extreme rain events by 2025.
Which logically leads to a higher chance of rivers just not coping, like we saw so devastatingly in 2021.
Exactly. That's the connection they're making.
That certainly underlines the urgency.
Mm.
But it's not just the weather itself, it's also about how prepared we are, isn't it?
Absolutely. And that's where the infrastructure part comes in. The sources suggest Germany's flood protection systems are under, well, significant scrutiny.
And there's something about policy delays. That sounds risky.
Yes, that's a key point highlighted. Apparently, planned reforms to flood protection laws might be pushed back until after the federal election in February 2025.
Waiting until after an election when the risk is potentially rising seems like a gamble.
It certainly reads that way. Now, at the same time, there are efforts being made. The Federal Office for Civil Protection and Disaster Assistance, the BBK, they're working on improving early warning systems.
Okay, so improvements are happening there.
Yes, but the sources also stress that what's really needed is a more integrated approach, not just warnings, but connecting the dots better.
Integrated how?
It means closer collaboration. Think climate scientists, engineers, local planners, emergency services, everyone working together more seamlessly for a kind of holistic response, not just reacting, but planning proactively based on the science.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So given these potential delays and the need for better integration, what about individual citizens? What can people do?
Well, the sources mentioned the European Commission's advice, which is pretty practical. Have emergency supplies for 72 hours. Food, water, essentials.
Right, the basic preparedness kit. That's a concrete first step.
Definitely. And beyond that, there's encouragement for communities to develop their own local emergency plans, run drills, practice.
And investing in more resilient infrastructure at the local level, too, presumably.
Yes, exactly. Flood-resilient building, better local defenses where appropriate. Plus, public awareness campaigns are seen as crucial, making sure people actually understand the risks and know what precautions to take.
So, with the bigger picture issues around infrastructure and policy potentially lagging, individual and community preparedness becomes even more critical.
That seems to be the implication, yes. Self-reliance or community reliance is becoming more important.
It sounds like there's a need for coordination at a higher level, too, to bring all these different players together.
There is, and the sources point to the German Conference on Disaster Risk Reduction, scheduled for March 2025, as a really key opportunity for that.
Ah, okay. So that's a forum for stakeholders to collaborate.
Precisely. A chance for government, scientists, industry, NGOs, everyone to get together, discuss these strategies for risk reduction, and hopefully agree on concrete actions to build resilience.
Given the urgency we've discussed, that conference sounds pretty vital.
Absolutely essential, especially with the climate projections and the infrastructure gaps. Getting everyone on the same page is critical.
Okay, so let's quickly summarize then. The risk of serious floods in Germany in 2025 appears to be increasing, driven by climate change interacting with certain infrastructure and policy challenges.
Right. But at the same time, there are important efforts underway to improve warnings and preparedness at all levels, government, community, and individual.
And that individual responsibility seems to be growing.
It does. Which leads to maybe a final thought for listeners to consider.
Go on.
Beyond just having that 72-hour kit, how can individuals really contribute more actively to making their whole community more resilient to floods? What does that look like in practice?